Hey guys, there's a certain type of video that I have decided that I will no longer create. And that video is secular philosophy videos that try to arrive at the God of Judaism. If you've been with this channel a long time, I have tried to present following God and Judaism as the most reasonable, rational thing anybody can do. And so I have tried to arrive at the God of Judaism through just philosophy and rationality and presenting why other philosophies aren't as reasonable as this one. So let me explain why I've come to this conclusion, and that's mainly why I wanted to make this video. Do you guys know how the best books are the ones that hit you right at the right time, give you the information that you've been looking for this whole time? Well, that book for me recently was Rabbi Eliezer Berkovits' book called God, Man, and History. I'll link the title in this video's description in case you want to read it, but it blew my mind, and he's so right. But anyway, Rabbi Eliezer Berkovits has a PhD in philosophy from the University of Berlin, and then he ended up becoming the head of the Department of Jewish Philosophy at a Hebrew college in Illinois. This entire time, I have been searching for logical, philosophical proofs of a caring God, that God cares about us. But what Rabbi Berkovits brilliantly points out in the book is that we can't arrive at a caring God just from philosophy. In fact, the only thing that philosophy can prove is the world's dependence on a cause, that there was a first cause. But it can't tell us anything more about this first cause, the nature of this first cause. Is this first cause just a brute fact? Does this first cause have emotional attributes? For example, just think about the philosophies of the ancient Greeks. They arrived through philosophy at a God that doesn't care about us. In fact, that kind of seems reasonable. Why would an infinite God care about us tiny, finite beings? This universe is so expansive and big, why would we matter at all? But even further, what is the nature of this God? Does it even have a nature? He pointed out something that was striking to me, because I've always thought that the philosophical proof of, well, created things have a creator. Our world was created, therefore it has a creator. But we're assuming that creation out of something is the same thing as creation out of nothing. We know that creation's out of something. Like if I was to take a ball of clay and create a bowl out of it, obviously the bowl implies that a human created it. But does that same process apply to something that is created out of no materials, like how this world was created? And so we can't really make that philosophical jump. It's a different category. But similarly, you can't disprove the existence of God. We don't know whether creation out of nothing necessitates a creator. And in fact, I think Rabbi Berkovits went so far as to say that really the only rational position we have is agnosticism. We don't know from philosophy the nature of the first cause. But so here's the reason, and the reason is pretty fascinating. Reason alone can't tell you whether somebody cares about you. For example, imagine your parents caring about you. You don't arrive at this conclusion from reason. You know that your parents care about you because you experience their care. You know your friend cares about you because you experience their friendliness toward you. And so similarly, the way that we know that God cares about us is not through philosophical proof, but because we experience God caring about us. And so this is where the revelation at Mount Sinai proves extremely important. This is the point where God revealed himself to a nation, telling them that he cared about them and that he cares about humanity. So even if we could derive a proof that God cares about us, we would still not have the knowledge that God cares about us if he hadn't revealed himself at Mount Sinai. So even if we could arrive at the proof that God cares about us, as Rabbi Berkovits says, the finest theories about friendship are no substitute for a friend. You can theorize about friendship all day long, But you never actually know what friendship is until you experience friendship. And so this is so cool because this whole time I've been searching for philosophical proof about why God cares about us. But the question itself can only be answered through experience. But now the question is, well, I'm not experiencing God right now. I've never experienced God, quite frankly. So how do I know that God cares about me? We know this because he appeared to an entire nation at Mount Sinai, and then also to later prophets. Why doesn't he just reveal himself to all of us right now? Why can't I experience God? So one answer to this is to think about relationships. A balanced relationship is never coerced. A genuine friendship is not one in which I force you to be my friend. Imagine that I create a drug that makes it so that when you take that drug, you are automatically my friend, and you can't help it but be friends with me. Now, obviously, we just know that this is not a true friendship. And so similarly, because God wants to have a relationship with us, he can't force the relationship. And so going back to the philosophical proofs, if we were able to arrive at an absolute proof that God exists and that God cares about us, and it's just so intellectually compelling that nobody can reasonably argue against it, then we would have no force but then to follow God and accept God. And this way we would be compelled. If we're reasoning, we are compelled to follow God. But the choice still has to be there. And that's why you can build up philosophical proofs for atheism and you can build up philosophical proofs for theism, but they're never going to be steadfast. So similarly, with us experiencing God, we can't experience him all the time. Because if we experienced him all the time, then we would lose our free will. We would be compelled to follow God. It's so obvious that God exists and cares about us. And even when he revealed himself at Mount Sinai, if you remember, he didn't reveal his full self, because a finite being cannot grasp the infinite without ceasing to be finite. So he could only show his back to Moses, not his face. And even when we look around us at the world, we don't see God, because God has to hide himself for a genuine relationship to actually develop. It was only necessary that he communicated to an entire nation once, because then they would be the witnesses to such an event, and then humanity from there on will have free will. Now, I still want to go and look into how this nation could preserve free will after seeing God. It seems like they probably did, since soon after they were worshiping a golden calf. But in any case, the reasoning is that God wants a fellowship with us, and so we can't be compelled, forced to follow God. It has to be of our own free will. Pretty sure that the Talmud says, like, all is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven. Like, the fear of heaven is in our hands, and it must remain in our hands. And so if you notice in the Bible isn't concerned at all about proving God. It just takes God's existence as like an axiom. Like, it's obvious that God exists. What the Bible is mostly concerned about is whether God cares. Like, God, show your face. Why are the evil prospering? Why are the righteous being destroyed? Show your face. One other interesting point out of many that he made was that science doesn't record unique encounters. It only records predictable encounters between object and object. Encounters between man and man, or man and God, are always unique. Every single encounter is unique. So when you saw your friend last Wednesday, for example, it was a unique encounter that will never happen again and never happened before. So if you just do everything based on science, then you're missing this crucial point of existence. Science will not be able to tell you exactly what happened at an encounter. So dismissing the Sinai revelation because you just follow science is quite unreasonable. So again, I just found that book amazing. I'm probably going to read it again for the third time because it answered a lot of my questions. I also will probably delete a lot of my philosophy videos that don't have to do specifically with Jewish philosophy. For example, I remember that I made a video about our purpose, and I made a philosophical leap that I now think is pretty naive. I said, because God is continually willing our existence, therefore he must care that we exist. Well, no, you can't make that leap, because just because God is continually willing our existence doesn't mean that he cares about us. That just may be the nature of God, is to continually will existence. I was just coming in with my presupposition of who God is. But I will still make Jewish philosophy videos when I think necessary. A lot of times I think that they help us understand certain laws. And that's kind of this channel's purpose, is to understand the entirety of the Noahide Code. So if you've made it this far, I appreciate you watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you kind of already knew this, it honestly takes a big intellectual burden off of what I've been trying to do. Because now, with Jewish philosophy, you don't really have to prove that it makes sense just from pure philosophy. Really, a lot of it just comes from our knowledge of God that occurred at Mount Sinai and what he's told us through the prophets. Anyway, I hope you found this as fascinating as I did. And maybe I'll make a more formal video on this type of stuff if you guys would like it. All right, I'll see you guys.